We will now begin the humorous speech contest. Please help me welcome contestant number 1, John Berry. A night to remember, John Berry.
Several years ago, when I was still active in the corporate world, I attended a one-week seminar in Montvale, New Jersey. It was held at a Holiday Inn. By the end of the first week, I had gotten to know many of the staff on a first-name basis, especially the pretty front desk clerk named Ingrid. Mr. Contest Master, fellow Toastmasters, guests, and anyone who's ever stayed in a Holiday Inn. One evening as I was walking across the lobby, Ingrid called out, "Mr. Berry, would you like a treat tonight? We have chocolate chip cookies." And I said, "I would love a chocolate chip cookie." And then she said, "Mr. Berry, is there anything else we can do for you tonight?" Now, I'm a single guy. And I was a single guy back then. And even though Ingrid was maybe 25 and I was 55, I didn't hold her youth and inexperience against her. It was an opportunity to flirt, and I couldn't resist the opportunity. So I said, "Well, yes, Ingrid, there is something you could do. Could you turn down my covers about 10:30 tonight?" She laughed politely, and then I said, "A piece of chocolate on my pillow would be nice too." And again she laughed. And then I said, as I was walking down the hallway to go to my room, I thought to myself, the only treat I'm going to get tonight is this chocolate chip cookie. It was a typical night in a hotel room on business. I watched a little bit of news, and then I sat down at my desk and opened up my laptop and worked on my presentation for the next day. I wanted to get comfortable, so I got up, I took off my shirt and tie, and eventually I took off my suit pants too and hung them on the closet door. I was working away on my laptop when the unmistakable theme song to The Tonight Show came on. I looked at my watch and it was exactly 10:30, and I thought, well, I guess Ingrid isn't coming by tonight. When suddenly there was a knock at the door. Boom, boom, boom. I thought, well, who could that be? I don't know anybody in Montvale, New Jersey. And then again, boom, 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 this time a little more urgent. And I went to the door and I peeked out, and there were the beautiful brown eyes of Ingrid looking back at me. But she had a worried look on her face. She said, "The hotel's on fire, evacuate immediately." Huh? And then she was gone to the next door. Boom, boom, boom. I looked back in my room and I realized I was in the situation when your house is on fire and you have just enough time to grab one item. What would you grab? I looked over, there was my laptop with my presentation for the next day. In fact, everything I knew about anything was on that laptop. And there was my cell phone, all my contacts, my business, my friends, my family. On the other side of the room, on my dresser was my wallet, $100 in cash, my credit cards that I needed to pay for the room, and most important, my driver's license. And a thought flashed through my mind of me standing in line at the DMV applying for a driver's license, and it wasn't a pretty sight. Lastly, there were my pants. Hanging on the closet door. Maybe in a resale shop they might be worth $5. Clearly, they were the least valuable item in the room. I pause briefly while you think about what item I should grab. You're right, I grabbed my pants. I jumped into my pants and buckled them and was out the door, and by now the white smoke had passed by and I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. And I had to go down the wall, hand over hand, till I found the exit, down 3 flights of stairs and out the door and onto the grassy knoll. I looked back and people were coming out of the exits, and smoke was coming out of the exits, and the front lobby was a bright orange. And then I saw her. She was standing on the grassy knoll, clutching a white terry cloth bathrobe tightly around her neck, as if it was the only thing between her and the elements. And I think it was. Her hair was soaking wet and water was dripping down her nose. Evidently, she'd been in the shower when Ingrid pounded on her door, and she had to make the same decision I did. What single thing to grab? I sauntered over to her. Confidently, I was in a power position. I was wearing pants. And she wasn't. And then I delivered the cleverest line I've ever delivered in my life. I pause again while you think of a clever line to fit the occasion. I sauntered over and I said, "Do you come here often?" She was sobbing. And then her lip began to smile. And then she said, "Very funny, very funny." And then we both burst out laughing, and we embraced. We were two strangers in the night. We didn't even know each other's name, but we were alive. We might have lost all of our belongings in the hotel, but we were alive. By now, the fire department had put the fire out. It turns out there was a grease fire in the kitchen, and it spread to the dining room, and the curtains went up in flames and spread to the front lobby. But our rooms were okay. Our clothes smelled like smoke for a few weeks, but no damage really done. The next morning, I went at the checkout counter. I bumped into her again. We talked briefly. I found out her name was Bridget, and she confided in me that she was a working member of the world's oldest profession. She was an attorney. Although she lived on the West Coast and I lived in the Midwest, we were too far apart to begin a relationship. But we shared a special bond that night. When faced with the age-old question, when the house is on fire and you only have time to grab one item, we grabbed the same item. We grabbed our dignity. It was a lesson learned and truly a night to remember.
We'll just be announcing the title to speaker number 2's speech. Speaker number 2 is VAMSI, JAMMALAMADAKA, TABLOPHOBIA. TABLOPHOBIA, VAMSI, JAMMALAMADAKA.
No, no, no! No! Did he really call my name? Oh God, why me? Why me? Why me? Fellow Toastmasters, you have just witnessed a panic attack caused by table topics. I coined the term tablophobia to help define this medical condition caused by an acute fear of table topics. My first attack of tablophobia was when I joined the Toastmaster organization last year and heard about this format. I was told that the topics can be on anything in the world, and the table topics master picks people randomly. I was petrified. What kind of a crazy organization did I sign up for? I was scared of public speaking, but the table topics took it to a whole new level of insanity. This concept terrorized me as I had to speak without any script or practice. I concluded that tablophobia has no cure. Prevention was the only way out. And with that in mind, I read the Toastmaster rulebook end to end to search for the ways to escape the table topics master, also known as the predator. Thanks to my parents, I have a very natural safety cover. My last name, JAMMALAMADAKA, cannot be attempted by the weak-hearted. So I thought, I will never be called up in table topics. But some of my fellow Toastmasters were getting adventurous and learning my last name fast. So I had to think about some other evasion techniques. The safest and the surest way to avoid table topics was to become the table topics master. This way you are the hunter, not the hunted. So I volunteered to become the table topics master as often as I can. The second best way was to become a speaker. Being a speaker is like being an ambassador to a foreign country. You have diplomatic immunity. The table topics master cannot touch you for the day. If I did not have these two roles, I made myself invisible by sitting behind a very tall person or going underneath the bench until the table topics was completed. But on an unfortunate Wednesday, I was made the camera operator. The camera operator sits right in front of the table topics master. I was like a sitting duck in front of the hunter. I tried some last-minute techniques like praying and hiding behind the camera, but nothing worked. The table topics master asked the question and even pronounced my last name correctly. The final barrier was broken. I froze like a deer in front of headlights. I was scared. My first instinct was to recite numbers 1 to 100 and alphabets A to Z, because that was the only thing I could remember at that time. But somehow I curbed this childish instinct and turned to my worst enemy, my brain. Scientists say that the normal human brain has two parts, the conscious brain and the subconscious brain. But mine has a mind of its own. Whenever I have a challenge, my conscious brain becomes an armchair critic, and my subconscious brain transforms itself into a condescending history teacher. So let me describe the conversation between me and my conscious brain on this first table topics question. The question was, what are your favorite activities in childhood? Can you please answer? Are you crazy? We can't answer this even if they give us a week. I told you to stay at home. If you only wanted to speak, we could have just dialed 1-800-LOVE-TALK. And they would have talked to us for hours in a sexy voice. But you will not listen to me. You had to join this big worldwide organization and give big speeches. Now look at you all sweaty and panicky. The only solution I have for you is to run. Run from this building, never ever, ever, ever return back. I already thought about running. I'm sitting in between two people. I can't run. Now stop being critical and make yourself useful. Useful? I'll make myself useful. The Toastmaster Bible says, "Thou shalt not be timed unless thou opens thou's mouth." Which means, until you utter something, you could stay here for eternity. Eternity, do you understand that? Oh my God, he was right. I don't want to stand in front of everyone forever. Then I had a brilliant and diabolical plan to start the timer. I said, "Could you please repeat that question, Mr. Tabletop Master?" And with that flash of genius, I started the timer. As my conscious brain was not being very useful, I summoned my subconscious brain, which was like a condescending history teacher, always bringing up some weird things from my past. Can you answer this? I don't have an answer for this, but I have a very, very old song for you. Do you want me to sing? Sing? There are people wearing ties and suits here. Can't you be professional? Don't act childish. Please give me a professional answer. Too late, buddy. Raindrops on roses and these are a few of my favorite things. This is what I have to put up with every day. I froze. I wanted to go back to my original instinct and recite numbers 1 to 100, but I forgot what comes after number 5. So I looked at the table topics master with pleading eyes and blabbered some random words. The table topics master was a very kind man, and he believed in mercy killing. So he said, "Thank you for that answer," and put me out of my misery. Later on, I realized that there was a cure for tablophobia, and that was to participate in as many table topics as you can. You see, the disease was also the cure. So for all you great table topics masters out here, if you have the courage to say my last name and ask me a question, I have the guts to stand in front of you. I may be still missing the brain, but at least I have something now.
Please help me welcome contestant number 3, JOANN Gardner. The good old days, JOANN Gardner.
Mr. Contest Master, fellow Toastmasters, and our honored guest, we all catch ourselves reminiscing about the good old days. Let me ask you a question. Can you remember when and how your good old days ended? I can. My good old days ended September the 17th, 1997, with the sound of... That sound, my friends, marked the end of an era. I had broken my olive green trimline Princess rotary dial telephone. Now, I'll admit, I'm the one that accidentally knocked it off the nightstand. But I must have dropped that phone 100 times before then. I may have cracked it once or twice, but I never really broke it. How could it be broken? It was only 12 years old. I couldn't believe it. I had had my good old black rotary phone for at least 20 years. It worked perfectly fine. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. I only changed it because I wanted the new trendy shade of olive green. My olive green trimline Princess rotary dial telephone and I had been through so much together. It had seen me through thick and thin. I felt like I had lost my best friend. What do you do when you lose your best friend? Answer, you shove the pieces of your friend in a bag and you go and get another. I went to my nearest Southwestern Bell store. For you young folks, that's the phone company. When I got to the counter, I handed the bag to the clerk. He opened the bag, looked inside, then looked at me, looked inside again, looked at me, then he motioned for another clerk to come over. He looked inside the bag and looked at me. He hushed his shoulders and walked away. Now, even though they both kept a straight face, I could tell they really wanted to laugh. But I couldn't figure out what was so funny. Why wasn't somebody going back to the storeroom to get my new olive green trimline Princess telephone? Finally, the clerk pulled himself together enough to speak. And his words, my friends, ended my good old days forever. The door was closed. His words were, and I quoted, "Ma'am, they stopped making that phone years ago. How long have you had this thing?" Thing? This thing was my olive green trimline Princess rotary dial telephone. My confidant, my consoler, my friend. I took his insinuation that my phone was antique as a personal insult. I stood in full-fledged self-righteous indignation as he tried to explain that features of the new hands-free phone I'd get it as a replacement. He went on and on. The new phone could do this. The hands-free phone could do that. All I could hear was, it didn't come in olive green. And the only two colors that came in were black and silver. Where were the burgundies, the greens, the teals, the pinks, the whites, the creams, and my beloved olive green phone of yesteryear? What was this world coming to? What barbarian would only make a phone in two colors? What happened to the good old days? I took a new hands-free phone home, and I distinctly remember placing it on the nightstand so it would be fully charged for the next morning. Well, about an hour later, my sister called. She's back in the back there. And as sisters often do, we started chit-chatting about this and that. And I went about the house doing my chores, using my new hands-free phone. I started thinking, I can kind of get used to this. The next morning, I woke up, and I remembered I hadn't called a job because I wasn't going in because I was sick, wink, wink. How about I had a doctor's appointment, wink, wink. So instinctively, I reached over on the nightstand for my phone. You guessed it, it wasn't there. I found that phone 2 days later in the basement in a clothes hamper. Evidently, after I finished talking to my sister, I was sorting clothes and accidentally dropped the phone into the clothes. How was I supposed to see a black phone in a pile of dark clothes? That would have never happened with my hands-free, the olive green trimline Princess rotary dial telephone. You see, it's got me all upset. That phone, you couldn't lose it because the base was connected to the wall with an electrical cable. Remember? Electric cable? And the headset was connected to the base with a cable. Boom! That was magical. That cable was magical. That beautifully color-coordinated curly coil cable managed to stay in a perpetual knot that even Houdini could not untangle. You couldn't lose your phone. Now, those were the good old days. I got my Apple 3GS. I guess I would say about 4 years ago. Apple came out with the 6GS just a few weeks ago. If Apple has its way, in 2 years, we'll be calling 2014 the good old days. Like it or not, it's going to happen. Ready or not, it's going to happen. So mark your calendars because, folks, this is the good old days.
Please help me welcome contestant number 4, Lamont Curry. How to protect yourself from PCS. How to protect yourself from PCS, Lamont Curry.
Mr. Contest Master, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. I want to thank you in advance because my speech will require audience participation. Now, I want everyone to think of your favorite TV show, and when you get in your mind, raise your hands. Okay, I can see a few people out there that either didn't pay their cable bill or are too embarrassed to tell us the name of their favorite show. Yeah, I see a few people out there. I know you're addicted to Scandal. You seen that show? It's scandalous, absolutely scandalous. Well, my favorite show is American Greed. You know, I look at that show and I say to myself, how can those people be so stupid as to give all of their money to a guy that has scam artists written all over their face? Now, I would never give my money to a scam artist. But if the truth be told, I have given $1 or $2 to 1,000 different scam artists. You see, that's been my lifetime contribution to panhandlers. Now, it's something particularly vulnerable about me Because when I go into public places, panhandlers just seem to gravitate toward me, just like the birds do when I go into the park. Just the other day, I was going into Walmart, and a gentleman stops me. Sir, could you loan me 95 cents so I can catch the bus to go to work? Well, I didn't want to see that young man miss the bus. He might lose his job, and then who's going to take care of his family? So I give him $2. Well, I get my cart and I go on into Walmart, doing a little shopping, get a little beer. It takes about 45 minutes. But on my way out, I'm stopped by the same guy. Partner, did you go to work and come back? Because I gave you bus fare an hour ago. Now, how many of you have given money to panhandlers? Raise your hands, raise them high. You need not be ashamed because these people are professionals. They know exactly what to say to touch your heart while they're tugging at your wallet. In fact, some of them are so good, I think they got advanced training from Toastmasters. Now, I'm not trying to give the impression that I think all panhandlers are crooks and scam artists. Hey, these are tough economic times, and I know some people are trying to make money any way they can. But if you want to avoid panhandlers, just don't go into public places. However, there's a new breed of panhandlers on the rise. And you won't meet these guys in public places. They kind of sneaky. They're like the ninja warriors. They attack you when you least expect it, when you're in the privacy of your own home. Now, have you ever come home from a hard day's work at the office, and you sit down at the dinner table, and you're just about to eat your dinner, and the phone rings? Hello? Hi, John. Lamont, this is John. And we're calling to thank you for your donation last year because we expect an even bigger donation from you this year so that we can feed even more starving animals in Africa. Well, the old Lamont was insecure and naive, and I never wanted to be responsible for those starving animals in Africa. So what would I do? I write a check. But after many months of therapy, watching Dr. Phil, I now know how to protect myself from crooks and scam artists. Now, this is a 3-step process, and you guys may want to write this down so you can use it at home. Step number 1, immediately take control of the conversation as soon as the caller starts his spiel. For example, hi, Lamont, this is John. Hey, John, slow your roll, John, because I have to get pencil and paper so I can write down everything I need to know about the poor starving animals in Africa. Well, I put the phone down, I go back to the table, I finish my dinner, I go to the bathroom, I brush my teeth, I take a leave, now I'm ready to talk to John. Step 2, build rapport with the caller. Hey, John, are you there? Okay, now, John, what is your last name? Smith, okay, Smith, got it. Now, John, what is your home phone number? Why do I need your home phone number? Well, John, you just called me on my home phone, and I know you want to build confidence and trust between us, so I need your home number in case I have additional questions for you. Step 3, reverse the direction of the conversation. Now, John, I got my checkbook out. I'm ready to write a check to you. But John, I need you to do me a favor. Can you make a donation to my favorite charity, which is Stop the Abuse of Racing Pigeons? John, do you realize there are more than 3,000 racing pigeon clubs in the U.S. and that these birds have to fly hundreds of miles just to be reunited with their loved ones? John, are you there? Well, by now, John has either died of boredom or he simply hung up the phone. In any case, because I know I have stopped yet another PCS attack. Now, if you guys would just follow those 3 simple steps when you get home, you too can protect yourself from PCS. Yeah! PCS is an acronym for panhandlers, crooks, and scams. Mr. Toastmaster.
Please help me welcome contestant number 5, DENEKE. How to survive being a klutz. How to survive being a klutz, DENEKE.
Thank you, distinguished contest master. I know this is a humorous speech contest, but you know, I'm going to use this time to talk about something very serious. You see, I'm a serious klutz. If you happen to be a klutz, if someone in your family or another loved one is a klutz, you know that klutziness can have very serious consequences, and I just think we need to bring this out in the public arena, don't you? Now, I didn't choose to be a klutz. It's something that's just deeply embedded in my genetic code. I can't help it. And I'm just thankful that I had family members who were kind and considerate enough of that situation to give me a lot of examples of how I could commit my own epic fails and walk away with my head held high as though nothing untoward had just happened. So I'm going to give you a few examples from my family. I'd like to start with my father. Now, my dad was a professional man. He was an architect by trade, and he was always very particular about his appearance, especially his hair. One day he drove to work in a torrential rain, and Daddy was nothing if not prepared. So of course he had his trench coat on, he had his umbrella in the car, and maybe you've had to deal with this situation yourself. You pull into the parking lot, it's just pouring down. How are you going to get from the building, even with your coat and your umbrella? You're still going to get wet if just getting out of the car is going to get you wet. So he did what many of you have probably done. He opened the door just a little bit, just enough to put the umbrella out and stick it up, and then he stepped out under the umbrella. So far, so good. Then he began collecting his various accoutrements, his roll of blueprints and his briefcase and so on. So he's balancing all these things, it's all going well, and then the keys fall to the ground and go splat in a puddle. Well, it's time to exercise. There's a move known as the stretch squat. Have you ever done this? This works fairly well, by the way, except that you have to be very careful to hold the umbrella perfectly straight, because if you don't, and this happened to him, 2 or 3 ribs are going to get caught in that little crack between the door and the body of the car. So he's down like this, he gets his hands on the keys, but the upward thrust of his body caused the umbrella to close around his head and send rivulets of water down the inside of his coat. So the first thing anyone saw of my father that morning was when he walked into his office, everybody's standing around having their morning coffee, and he sets his umbrella down to dry, and he peels off his coat, and they just gape at him because he's standing there in a drenched suit. And they look at him as if to say, how the heck did you do that? And he just looked at them and said, well, at least I kept my hair dry, and walked off to his drafting board to begin work. Well, I might have had half a chance had my mother's gene pool been any better, but alas, it was not. Now, my mother was also a professional person. She spent most of her adult life as the executive secretary to a hospital administrator, and her job had her running around all over the hospital throughout the day, and she always preferred the stairs over the elevator. Now, family lore has it that my mother wore high-heeled baby shoes. I can't corroborate that. I only know that I personally never saw her in anything less than a 3-inch heel. Well, she was coming down from the 2nd floor one day, going 10, 12 miles over the speed limit. And you know how these things go. I mentioned the 3-inch heels, right? Something got a little bit out of rhythm as she came down, and she caught one heel on the edge of a step and it sheared the heel right off. The next step snapped the heel off of the other shoe. And from her description of this, I can only picture her still running down the stairs without her feet actually touching anything. She's just kind of going through the motions, you know, until she hits the crash bar. And it's the sound, excuse me, it's the sound of the door banging into the wall that alerts most of her coworkers to look up in time to see one Marge DENEKE rolling like a bowling ball across that wide polished corridor, ending in a crumpled heap against the elevator door, which, as luck would have it, opened up just then and swallowed her alive. And it took her back up to the second floor. So the next anybody saw of one Marge DENEKE, she was coming back up the same stairwell door on her heelless high heels, walking rather gingerly and saying, I'm going to run home and change shoes. These are a little uncomfortable. So that's the gene pool that I swim in. Now they say that you shouldn't swim alone, right? You should swim with others. I have two sisters in that same gene pool. I'm going to tell you about one of them. My oldest sister, Nancy, I think is the reason that drive-through banks across the country had to redesign their drive-through mechanisms. You see, she's a bunch older than me, and when she was a fairly young adult, the way, excuse me, the way that a drive-through worked was you pulled up, you cranked your window down, that's how old she is. And you cranked your window down and pressed a button, and a drawer physically came out. Some of you may remember this. A drawer came out towards the car. You didn't want to park too close because it would put a dent in the side of your car. It's programmed to come out this far, no less. So she was driving an old beater of a car with a driver's side window that was stuck up. I don't mean the window was a snob. I mean it was stuck in the up position. So she did the only thing she could do. She drove up a little bit past where the door would come out, got out of the car, pressed the button, and just then, as luck would have it, her check fell out of her hand. So she bent down to pick it up. You guessed it. That's when the drawer came out. Pinned her against the side of her car. Now, my sister has been known to exaggerate just a little bit, and she swears she was in this position for about 4 hours. And during that time, you know that smoky glass they have over the window, you can't really tell what's going on? She swears that they went outside and rounded up people from the street. You gotta see this. And whether that happened or not, she's also convinced that they came up with a training film to use for future television. So finally, the thing let go of her. She did the only thing you could do at that point. She bent down and picked up her check, got in the car and drove to a bank where nobody knew her and opened a new account. So, I tell you these stories just so that I can show you, through my own stories, how I've taken that information and learned to commit my own epic fails and walk away with a little bit of dignity. So I want to start with the time that the time, shucks, look at the time. Sorry.
Our third place winner for the Humorous Speech Contest for fall 2014 is John Daddy. Our second place winner for fall 2014 Humorous Speech Contest is, and I should be able to say this, VAMSI JAMMALAMADAKA. now I know how to deal with PCS. Our first place winner, Lemon Curry.